Hey y'all, welcome to the Big Bear Homestead. And today on Kitchen Time, we're going to make one of my all-time favorite cookies. So today, we're making Skinny Minties.
Yummy goodness.
Okay, so I'm sure you're wondering, what in the world is a Skinny Minty? Well, a few weeks ago, I started seeing all of these ads for the wonderful Girl Scout cookies that are coming out. And of course, who would I be if I didn't say, well, I wonder if I could make my own. So a few weeks ago, we tried to make one of the other ones with coconut and chocolate, and that worked out pretty well. They were bars instead of cookies because I didn't really have the wonderful cookie cutter to make the perfect little circles with the hole in the middle. So this time around, and of course with that video, we made it together. So we learned a bunch of things along the way. Well, I wanted to do this one a little bit different because I absolutely love these cookies and I really wanted to make sure that I could do them right before I let you know how I do them. So over the last couple of days, I've been kind of tweaking the recipe and I think I finally have it figured out. So I'm going to let you know what the recipe was that I started with and then where I ended up and what they taste like now. Okay, so let's talk ingredients. One thing I really liked about this recipe was that there's really not a whole lot of ingredients to begin with, and then on top of that, you really don't have to go out and buy a lot. Most people already have most of these things in their pantry or in their cabinets. So let's get started and talk about ingredients. You're going to need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You'll need a full cup of sugar. You're going to need 1 1/4 cups of flour. You'll need 1 egg, 1/2 cup of cocoa. You'll need a full stick of butter. Not really sure about the measurement on the coconut oil, but just give yourself a nice little blob and we'll just add it as we go. And then you're going to need almond bark or dipping chocolate, and I'll tell you, I tried both. I tried the really expensive dipping chocolate, I tried the middle of the line dipping chocolate, and then last night when I went to go get more, I had a lady stop me and say, why are you wasting your money on that? Try the almond bark, just put a little bit of coconut oil in there, it'll thin it out, and you'll get way more for your money. So we tried it last night, and let me tell you, it's the best option. So almond bark with a little bit of coconut oil works better than any of the other options, and it's a lot more cost effective. And then the last thing you'll need, which is going to kind of give it that minty fresh taste, is going to be either peppermint extract or peppermint oil. Now, the original recipe called for 3/4 teaspoon of the oil, of the extract. And when we first did that, it was not nearly enough. You could barely even taste it, and that was just in the dough. Well, over the next couple of times of making it, I used the oil. We put it in the dough, and then we also put it into the dipping chocolate when we dip the cookies into the chocolate. And I'm going to tell you, that's the way to do it. So we'll get all into that in just a few minutes, start putting the stuff together, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things real quick before we start mixing things together. You're going to preheat your oven to 350, sorry, not 450, 350. Now, you don't want to do that right away because once we make this mixture, this, the dough, I guess, doesn't really feel like a dough to me. It's kind of cakey, but whatever, the dough mixture that you have, you're going to actually put it in the freezer and let it sit for an hour. So you don't want to preheat your oven right away, but keep in mind you will put it at 350 when the time comes. The other thing is, go ahead and get out your baking sheets, your cookie sheets, and some parchment paper, because this will save a lot of cleanup and a lot of headache in the long run. So the very first thing we're going to do is you're going to take your 1 1/4 cup of flour and go ahead and just pour that into your mixing bowl. Okay? And then you'll take your half a cup of cocoa. Okay? And we'll pour that in. And then the last thing you need is a 1/4 cup of salt. Can't let that get wasted in there. Okay, 1/4 cup of salt. I mean 1/4 cup, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Sorry about that, guys. I got all these cups on my brain. You really don't want a 1/4 cup of salt. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And that's actually really important because once you make these and you taste it, you will actually taste that little bit of contrast, the little bit of salt that's in the mixture. So it's definitely important. It gives it that extra little taste. Okay, so go ahead and we'll just stir that all together. And you want to make sure that it's mixed well. And because your flour will kind of be a little clumpy, sometimes your cocoa powder can get a little clumpy. So you just want to mix it all in real well. And let me tell you from experience, if you don't mix this in well, when you're rolling out your dough, you'll see little pieces of white. And the funny thing is, this will turn completely brown, dark, dark brown. So when you have that white little piece in there, it doesn't look really good. The same thing when you're doing your sugar. You want to make sure that your sugar's broken up real good. You don't have any clumps of sugar, because that will also do the same thing once we start mixing it all together. Okay, so there you go. That's what it's supposed to look like. Now, the next thing you're going to do is we're going to cream up the butter and the sugar together. So, go ahead and take your full cup of sugar, and you're going to put that into your standing mixer. Okay? And then we'll take our stick of butter, which is a half a cup, and put that in there. And now you'll want this to be softened. You don't want it to be hard. It makes it a lot easier for it to cream if it's softened. Okay. Put that in there. And we'll get out our attachment. Now, I've played around with the different ones that I liked. I had the one that has just a spatula. And I've said this before in some of my other videos, that I really need the one that has the rubber piece that kind of goes and scrapes the side of the bowl. But for creaming the butter and sugar together, the whisk attachment actually worked really, really well. So that's the one I'm going to use today. So go ahead and hook that up and lift the bowl. And you don't need to do this really fast. You kind of want to be at 1 or 2 on your speed. And you can kind of speed it up just a little bit, but you really want this to just mix together. And what will happen is the butter will start to soften even more and mix with the sugar. And it will cream up, is what they say, is to cream up your butter and your sugar together. And it's supposed to look fluffy. Now, mine never got completely fluffy, but it did actually look kind of like when you do the pumpkin roll. It kind of looks like that. It's kind of got that icing look to it. And I'll show you that in just a second. So let's get it all mixed together. And we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so now that you've creamed up your butter and sugar together, the next thing is you're going to add your egg and your peppermint, whether it be the extract or the oil. If you're going to do the peppermint extract, I would recommend doing anywhere from a full teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half, because 3/4 of a teaspoon doesn't cover it. So you'll want to turn your mixer back on very slow, crack an egg, put that in your mixing bowl, let it mix. And you can speed it up just a little bit. You don't want it to go too fast. I would say that's like a 3, so maybe a 3 or a 4. And then I'm going to use, I did 5 last night, and that was okay. So I'm going to do about 7 this time, because I think that'll take us right to about where we need to be. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And I'll tell you, it's a very overpowering smell, but it seems to me with experience of cooking these that some of it gets baked out in the oven. And then the other thing too that I'll remind you of later is it seems to us that the longer that they sat in the refrigerator and it's almost like they needed to cure. Because once they have sat for a day or so in the refrigerator, the mint, you can taste the mint a lot more. So now that it's mixed together pretty good, I'm going to speed it up just a little bit to make sure everything's mixed together really well. I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to get all the sides, get everything off the sides of the bowl. And then the next thing we're going to do is very slowly, we're going to add that flour mixture that we made with the cocoa. All right, so we're going to do that real quick. Well, I say real quick, we got to do it slow. Because let me tell you, if you do this too fast, there is cocoa in here and flour, and you will have a snowstorm if you start pouring this in too fast, or if your beater is going too fast too. Because I accidentally turned mine the opposite way the first time I did it, and I had like brown clouds of just chocolate and flour all over the place. So just very slowly add that in. You can see just a little bit will start to kick back up if you go too fast. Okay, now I'm going to finish this up and we'll be right back. Okay, so my dough is done. I'm going to lift that off of the standing mixer and go ahead and get yourself a nice clean working area. And you don't really need to have like a floured surface or anything like that. This is sticky, but it sticks to itself more than it does to another surface. As you can see, it'll comes right out. You just got to scrape it a little bit. It's got kind of a sandy texture to it from the sugar, but it sticks together really well. Now, normally I would kind of like rush through this, but I wanted to show you how to do this. This is kind of a, you have to make a nice long tube, almost like how when you get your biscuits in the, well, we don't, but you know how they sell the biscuits in the grocery store where it's in a tube, or your crescent rolls or something like that. That's kind of how you want this to be. So what I did is kind of knead it together a little bit so that it's almost a solid piece. You know, you don't want a whole lot of creases. And then what I do is kind of make it like almost like a rectangle. And I kind of take the ends and roll it together. And then what I do is I grab my hands and I start rolling it out very slowly. And I'm pushing down and out and then pushing back. Kind of feel like the Karate Kid, like, not wax on, wax off, but what was the one with the painting or something like that? But anyway, so you're going to roll it and kind of pull out and push away from you and pull towards you. And what you'll see is that starts to make a nice, even tube. Now, the directions say that you can use a toilet paper roll, or not toilet paper, paper towel roll, and kind of unwind it so it's one piece. And then you can roll it around that to keep the form. But I really didn't see that being, a necessity. Now, I made mine a little bit longer because, the cookies, when you buy them in the box, they're not very big. And I didn't really want these to be big, huge cookies. So I kind of rolled my tube out They say 1.5 to 2 inches. I guess that's kind of close. I mean, it's not like I took my seamstress ribbon out and, decided to measure it. And then I kind of tap the ends so that they're kind of even, so that when you make that last little cookie on the end, that it'll be even. So now that you have that done, take some parchment paper and just transfer it onto your parchment paper. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the freezer and let it sit for about an hour. Now, of course, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be able to sit and form for about an hour. So we're going to take this, put it in the freezer, and we'll be back in an hour to start cutting our cookies and put them in the oven. Okay, so it's been about an hour. We've pulled the dough out of the freezer. We went ahead and set our oven temperature to 350, so it's preheating now. We're going to take and unroll the dough, and we'll go ahead and start cutting our cookies. Now, they tell you to cut these 1/4 of an inch. I have learned that the thinner they are, the better, because that keeps with the consistency of the original cookies that we're trying to mock. So, cut down, and they're going to be kind of hard because they're frozen. So you're just going to want to cut them into small pieces all the way down the line. And then what you can do is take your piece that you used in the freezer, go ahead and place it on your cookie sheet, and once you get finished cutting all the way through this, you can put them all onto the cookie sheet on the parchment paper, and we'll put them in the oven. Okay, so now we have all of our cookies. They're lined up onto the parchment paper. They don't need to really be spread out or anything like that because they're not really going to expand much. We just need to cook them so that they solidify into a hard cookie. So basically all we're going to do is take this, put it in the oven, and we'll do that for 350 Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes. Okay, so since we have about 10 minutes before the cookies are ready, and then another maybe 5 or so before they're cool for us to dip them, now's the time to get your double boiler going and to prepare your chocolate. So go ahead and put water down in the bottom pot, and then you'll put your top pot on, and it'll get pretty hot pretty quickly, especially we have gas burners, so it heats up pretty quick. What you're going to do is get your almond bark, and we're going to chop up. We're going to start with 3 blocks, and the recipe called for 8 ounces of the dipping chocolate. And here's the thing, you're going to know how much chocolate you need. I just went ahead and bought a whole brick. I did 2 batches the other day, and it took the entire 24-ounce brick that I bought. So maybe about 12 ounces of the almond bark. But the thing is that just as far as figuring out cost, it's a lot more cost effective to get this, because this cost me like $2 or $3, I think $3 for the brick. So half of it was only $1.50. And then we're going to go ahead and put that in there, melt it, and just do small batches at a time, but you want just enough chocolate in there so that when you put the cookie down in, it almost completely submerges, and then you're going to lift them up with a fork, and you'll shake off the excess. So give me just a minute, and we'll get this chocolate going. Okay, we've put 3 of the squares of almond bark into the double boiler. It's just about melted, but it's very, very thick. So this is where I go ahead and add just a little bit, like maybe half a teaspoon of coconut oil in there, and that thins it out just a little bit. And the reason why that's important is when we start to dip these cookies, you want the chocolate to be able to kind of fall off. All the excess needs to kind of fall off of the side of the cookie so you don't have big clumps, because this isn't like a big huge chunk of chocolate. This is just supposed to barely coat the top of the cookie. Now at this time also, this is where I went ahead and put in the peppermint oil into the chocolate as well. And I found that made all the difference as far as the flavor goes. So for the 3 brick, or the 3 squares, I'm going to put in 2 drops. And then when I start adding more, I'll usually add 1 square at a time to add more chocolate. And as I add a square, I'll add another drop of peppermint, just to kind of keep it going. So we've got just another couple more minutes before the cookies are ready to dip, and then I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so we're in the home stretch now. Cookies have cooled. Had them on a wire rack. We're going to go ahead. Our chocolate is melted. We put a little bit of the coconut oil in there to thin it out a little. Put a drop of peppermint oil in there. So now you just take your cookies, drop it down in the chocolate, swirl it around a little bit, and then once it's covered, you lift it up with the fork and just very lightly tap it on the edge of the pot to shake off the excess, and then place it onto a piece of parchment paper. And basically you're going to do this with all of your cookies. And this batch, cutting them the size that I cut them, makes anywhere from about 40 to 50 cookies. So, and you'll be happy that it makes that many, because these things are fantastic. And like I said before, make sure that you allow yourself some time for them to cool in the refrigerator, because here's the thing. Once these are done, they need to set. Just like when we did the Samoa bars, you want to make sure that chocolate completely hardens. And like I said with those bars, it seems that the longer they sit and they have a chance to kind of cure, that really helps with the flavor, especially with the peppermint. So just going to take, and this is a little bit of time consuming, but it goes pretty fast. Put on your favorite Pandora station or watch some YouTube videos, listen to them while you're doing this, and it goes pretty quickly. So give me just a little while to get through the rest of these, and then I'll show you what they look like when they're done. Okay, so the cookies have had a chance to cool. I finished dipping all of them. Some of them have had a little bit longer than others. We had made a previous batch, put it in the refrigerator, and let them cool so that we would be able to show you what they look like when they're done. This is what they'll look like. And we pulled up a picture of what we're trying to emulate, and I'll tell you, they look almost identical. And when you break them open, they look almost like what we're trying to copy. Now, let's see if they taste like what we're trying to copy. Very good. And remember what I said, the longer these cure, so if they cure overnight, you'll definitely taste the mint more the next day. Well, this was really fun. I really enjoyed making these, and I'm really glad that you were able to come along with me and learn how to make them yourselves. If you're new to our channel, we welcome you. We'd love for you to stick around. If you're already subscribed to us, go ahead and give us the old like, share, comment, you know the drill. And thanks for stopping by. And like always, have a nice day. Hey y'all, welcome to the Big Bear Homestead. And today on Kitchen Time, we're going to make one of my all-time favorite cookies.